Welcome everyone to the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series, and thank you for joining us today. Today we'll be talking about what it takes to create an effective team that will drive your program success. We're joined by two excellent panelists who will talk us through what they look for when they're hiring, onboarding, and managing practices that truly engage employees and approaches to creating a collaborative environment. Jennifer Burgoyne, Program Manager at Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership, will be running the presentation slides. So let's get started. This webinar is part of the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series, which is funded by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention through the National Mentoring Resource Center and facilitated in partnership with Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership. These webinars would not be possible without the planning team, which includes the mentoring partnership shown on this slide. In addition to this webinar series, the NMRC provides resources for mentoring practitioners. At the end of this webinar, we'll provide more details about how you can access this free support. This webinar is going to be great, and we want you to have what you need to do this work. So before we get started, I wanted to share some housekeeping information. In 1 week, you will receive an email with information about how to download a copy of these slides and view the webinar recording. You can also access this information directly by going to Webinar's website in the next week or so. And to continually improve this series, we're looking for your input. A short survey will pop up as you exit the webinar. Please take just 3 minutes to give us your feedback so we can continue to make this better. We want this to be an interactive experience, so please use the question box on your control panel to ask questions throughout the webinar. Our awesome question moderator, Desiree Robertson, Senior Manager with the Memphis Grizzlies Foundation, will be selecting some highlights to share with panelists during the Q&A portion of the webinar, which will come toward the end. We can't get to all of the questions because there are so many of you on this webinar today. So the questions that we share with our panelists are generally ones that broaden or deepen the conversation. Please keep in mind that we can't address specific needs of individual programs or things that aren't directly related to the topic today during this time period. If we don't get to your question or you have a specific question for your individual program, we encourage you to follow up with our panelists directly. First, so that we can get a sense of who's with us today, we have two short polls. So the first one is, what is your experience level in the mentoring field? All right, excellent. So we have 26% that are beginners, and we're hoping that this will be a start to your mentoring careers. 64% are experienced and 10% experts. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Now we have just one more poll that we'd like to launch, which is, what is your role in the mentoring field? All right, finish up your responses to that. Excellent. Wonderful. So about 61% are practitioners. Thank you so much for joining us. We have some researchers with us, technical assistance providers, funders, and 20% are others. So we've got a good group with us today. All right, so let's talk about our objectives for the day. So today we're going to be looking at exploring competencies that help mentoring professionals excel. So what are we looking for when we're finding our new employees? We're going to learn some onboarding and management practices that truly engage employees. And then we'll gain approaches to creating collaborative environments where we can really help our employees thrive and our programs to thrive. So let's do our introductions. I'm Audrey Siegfried from Colorado, and I will be your facilitator for this webinar. I've been on the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series team for the last 2 years and serve as a consultant and trainer with Mentor Colorado, which is our statewide mentoring partnership here in Colorado. Let's check out our awesome panelists for today's webinar. I'm joined by Michelle Drake, who is the Director of Operations with Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Midlands in Omaha, Nebraska, and Reggie Davis, Executive Director with Street Ministries in Memphis, Tennessee. So Michelle has been with Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Midlands since 2004. In these 13 years, the agency has quadrupled in size, growing from 9 employees to 37. As Director of Operations, she guides and manages the overall provision of human resource services, policies, and programs for the agency, assists and advises company managers about HR issues, originates and leads HR practices and objectives that promote a culture which emphasizes quality, continuous improvement, and high performance. Michelle is a graduate of Hastings College and holds certifications from both HRCI and SHRM. She is motivated by the belief that positive outcomes for kids and agency success depend upon having well-trained, accountable, highly engaged, and happy employees. Welcome, Michelle. And
Thank
now
you,
our next
Audrey. Happy to be here.
Wonderful, thank you. And now our next panelist, Reggie, has worked in the youth development field for the last 17 years in Memphis, Tennessee. The first 4 years, he served as volunteer youth pastor while still working in corporate America. In 2004, Reggie followed his passion and entered the youth development world full-time with the opportunity to work with Young Life. In 2010, he transitioned to Streets Ministries as a site director, and in 2014, Reggie was promoted to executive director. Reggie's been married for 3 years and has 3 wonderful daughters, ages 16, 13, and 10. Welcome, Reggie.
Thanks, Audrey.
So thank you, panelists, and Desiree, and Jen, and everybody on this call for being here today. We're going to have the opportunity to check out some awesome approaches to creating and managing motivated and engaged teams. I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation. Our staff are our most critical resource in our programs, and this is a particular passion area for me. So to get us started in our conversation for how to create an excellent team, I'd love to first talk about who we're looking for. So, what are the knowledge, skills, and abilities we want and need our staff to have to be successful? Michelle, why don't you lead things off? What are you looking for when bringing on new employees at Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Midlands?
Well, of course, there are certain requirements for each type of position at any organization. But as you'll see on the next slide, there are some qualities we look for in all employees regardless of their role. For one thing, we are looking for someone who can align with our mission. Secondly, as mentoring organizations, we want people who will understand the value of relationships, because that's what we're all about, right? And someone who has the ability to connect with others, and you can start to see that even from your first telephone screening interview that you do. And so that's a very important quality. And also somebody who understands the value of volunteers and donors, and will generally be good advocates and stewards for the agency and for the kids we serve.
Thank you, Michelle. Those are some excellent things to keep in mind. I think we all really want to ensure that our staff members are mission-driven. You know, they truly get what we're about. They value those relationships and can advocate for our programs. Do you have any tips for how we can assess our candidates to determine whether or not they have these key areas covered?
Yeah, we have just a couple examples of interview questions on the next slide here. And these are questions that we would ask any candidate, not just people who are going to be working in direct service, but all of our employees. What's been your favorite volunteer experience? Tell us a little bit about mentors that you've had in your life, and kind of see if they're able to tell you even about a teacher or coach or somebody in their life who has been important in helping them become successful. And then also sort of their attitude about philanthropy. And if you feel like philanthropic is is too big of a word. You can say, what sort of times when you've made a donation to charity, what has been rewarding for you about that experience?
That's great, and it seems like these connect so very well to those the previous slide and those kind of competencies or attributes that we had highlighted there. So I'm sure you get a lot of really robust information from these questions. Reggie, could you tell us a little bit about the primary things that you're looking for at Street Ministries?
Yes, thank you, Audrey. As you will see on the slide before you, there are three primary things that we're looking for now and potential staff. They have to be passionate about young people. They have to actually love young people and love being around young people. And that seems like something that goes without saying, but we have invited people to the opportunity to serve alongside of us, and we've seen it with teachers in the schools that we partner with, that there are some people who see this strictly as just, oh, here's an opportunity to work. But I think to be effective with our mission, you have to actually love young people. You have to love being around them. Secondly is our faith. We are a faith-based Christian organization. As I like to say, we are unapologetic and unashamedly a Christian organization. And so as a staff person, you have to be able to sign off on our statement of faith. Now, with that, we're not from a specific denomination, and there's a lot of freedom within that, but we do ask people to be Christian in their faith as far as staff, not really volunteers in other positions. And then thirdly, this is one that's fairly new to us in the last 3 years, but we're trying to even figure out within the interview process if you get excited about data and metrics. We, as I like to say, we're not data driven, but we definitely are data informed. And so we're trying to build a culture at Streets Ministries that will not only allow for data, but we need people who will get excited about it, because we understand that having the data is going to help us to accomplish the goals and meet outcomes that we have created for ourselves and for the young people actually who now play a part in the outcome. So those are three things that we try to figure out in the interview process.
Excellent. And it seems that those are, such really valuable things to be looking for. And Reggie, I know you and I had talked about that. While it can be taken for granted sometimes, that love for young people is so important, and we really need to be very mindful of ensuring that the people we hire are passionate about that. And then the faith piece connects so well to the mission-driven experience also.
For sure.
So we'll definitely talk more about the data and metrics in a little bit when we talk about some practices about engaging employees. But why don't you talk to us a little bit about this interview question that you used, one of your key interview questions during the hiring process? Yeah,
it's a fairly simple interview question, but it has come to mean a whole lot for us, even in the length of an interview. But it is, tell us what you know about Streets Ministries. Tell us what you know about our organization. And I used to consider it a softball question. And there were so many candidates who just bombed on it, and I would still continue to do a whole interview, but knowing internally I had checked out. And so a mentor of mine said, why do you even continue to interview? And I was like, well, I'm a nice guy, and so I don't want to just send them home, after 5 minutes. But he said, if they can't answer that question for you, they can't tell you about your organization. If they didn't have enough, either if they were naive enough to not do it or ignorant enough to not do it, they don't deserve any more of your time or the organization's time. And so, just being able to come in and tell me about our organization, I mean, just go to the website, get a couple of points, but that has become our number one question on whether or not we continue with an interview.
Thank you, Reggie. And one of the things that this just makes me think about is we're really striving for people who are interested in learning and growing. And one of those things is learning about our organization. But Michelle and Reggie, you both have strong cultures of learning and change at your organization. So could you tell us a little bit more about why this is important and how this plays into who you're looking for? And Michelle, why don't you get us started on this question?
All right. Reggie makes a great point about finding out if a candidate has taken the time to really learn about what you do in your organization and comes into the interview prepared. And if they can tell you what you do, and if they can ask some, questions of you that reflect that they have done a little research, it's a very good sign that someone has, this other thing that we look for, which is a willingness to learn. It's a very important attribute for any employee because, our society is always changing, as are federal, state laws that affect how we do business. And, we have to be able to adapt our programs as well as our policies and procedures to stay relevant and legal in what we do. So.
Excellent. Thanks, Michelle. And Reggie, do you have some thoughts around this about why culture of learning and change is so important to Streets Ministries?
Yeah, just, culture is, I think, vital to a growing organization. Any organization that desires to continue to grow and change, you have to create a culture of it. I've been fortunate enough to live in the city of Memphis, where one of the premier nonprofit organizations in the world exists, and that is ALSAC, ALSAC, which is the fundraising arm for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. And the culture of St. Jude and ALSAC has really been transformational for me and what we try to do as Streets. They have such a culture of growing and learning, but not only do they want to grow and learn and change, they're so willing to share what they learn with others, whether it's someone in the medical field or if it's just a little nonprofit like Streets Ministries. If they feel like they have something, resources that can benefit us, they have been very kind with that. And so that culture, right, has sort of permeated over into our organization to the point that, internally I've told our staff and our board, I want us to be the St. Jude of youth development. And so we got a little ways to go, but we are definitely working on that culture of learning and being willing to change based on the needs of our young people and our city and our society at large.
I love, Reggie, that this is something that not only do you want this to be a part of what your organization is internally, but you also want this to be a part of how you interact with the rest of the field externally. So that's really awesome. So thank you both for sharing kind of your input on what we're looking for in our employees. So let's move on to kind of the next step in the process, which is onboarding. And onboarding is super critical to employee success, and this can kind of be make or break as to whether or not an employee is prepared for the work before them. So Michelle, you have just tons of experience with onboarding. Could you talk to us about what new employees are looking for in the onboarding process?
Absolutely. As mentoring agencies, of course, we're in the business of building relationships. And one of the most important of those is the relationship that your organization has with its employees. So we kind of look at this poor guy here on the slide and think back to the last time that you started a new job, and remember that clueless and uncomfortable is not the way that we want our new employees to remember their first days or weeks in our organizations. So on the next slide, we have a 5 things that people really need and want, not just out of an onboarding process, but really throughout their time with your agency. But of course, right now we're talking about how to get those things started for new folks. Number 1, clear expectations. We need to know, what does success look like in my position? What is expected of me as far as reporting? What time am I supposed to come to work every day? What time am I allowed to take lunch? How much flexibility do I have in my schedule and different things like that? And it's important that we get those things laid out for them at the beginning so they aren't wondering. And number 2, belonging. Of course, we all like to feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves, and we want to start developing the relationships with the people we work with, and also understanding how we fit in to the bigger picture of the mission and the agency, and how the agency relates to the community, and kind of how all those things fit together, and what each person's particular job brings to the mission, and how everything works together to make it happen. And then last but not least, of course, is making sure that we go through the guidelines and policies and all of those things that maybe aren't always the most fun part of onboarding, but definitely are necessary. And those things are part of building your culture. So
this is excellent information, Michelle. So with these as your goals and objectives, could you talk me through some of the key onboarding activities that you use to ensure your employees are prepared for and able to reach these goals, and that you're able to reach these goals?
Sure. So we have a 90-day orientation period, but the first week is especially critical to get those clear expectations out. We schedule plenty of time with the new person's supervisor, so they're able to have time to go through the job description line by line and discuss those other expectations like we mentioned before. Reporting, how do I keep a timesheet, just all of the different kind of housekeeping type items, but that's part of having the clear expectations. We can't fulfill the expectations if we don't know what they are. So we do schedule the first week pretty much down to the minute for our new employees. We have a welcome activity the morning of their first day where all of the staff gets together kind of in our lobby area, and we have introductions and we have treats, and we share a little bit of some trivial knowledge about ourselves, like what kind of pets do you have, or just to sort of get the ball rolling on forming relationship with that new person. And then we need to kind of give the person the big picture of what Big Brothers Big Sisters is, again, how it fits into the community, kind of the structure of how we fit into our national organization and national network, as well as the history of the agency here in Omaha. And then we have the new employee meet with the head of each department, so they get a really good idea of what each group or each team is responsible for and what they do. And then again, of course, learning your own role. So there's obviously a lot of training for your specific job. And there are some things that all employees will take part in, and some that are specific to the position. Two of the things that we have everyone do through our online training center that's provided by our national organization is a class called Achieving the Vision, or the Mission rather, which is an overview of how we do our service deliveries and the outcomes we're looking for, and also our child safety training. So all employees, whether they're working directly with the kids or not, do the child safety. So obviously there's a lot that goes into getting a person ready to become, ready to do their job. But those are some of the keys.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. And we will have an example of your schedule in just a moment, which is going to be really great for people to be able to see. But before we move on to that slide, Reggie, I know that you share some of these same key practices that Michelle has been discussing. So I was hoping you could tell us a little bit more about your top practices in the onboarding process.
Yeah, for sure. We do, it's a youth organization, so the training and a lot of the, protocols and procedures and guidelines and all of that stuff, everybody does. But one of the things that's unique for us is that we're primarily in two different communities in Memphis, but the two communities are distinctly different. So we operate two 34,000 square foot facilities. One of those communities is 99% African American, and it's one of the most dangerous zip codes in America. Not one of those statistics we're proud to say, but it is what's being recorded right now. And one of the poorest zip codes in America. And then vice versa, we have a site that's 50% Hispanic, and the majority of those young Hispanics being undocumented. And so what we like to do is, have new employees from each site, obviously learn about the neighborhood they're in, but we also have them go over to learn about the other neighborhoods that they're in. We find out that that's, very informative and educational for our employees, because it's so easy that, you're serving at this one site and you think that's all of Memphis, and Memphis is such a diverse city. And so we want to make sure that they understand the sensitivities of each other's neighborhoods, but then we also make sure that we connect them with all the stakeholders in that week. So we try to schedule a lunch with a board member, and they try to get a coffee or a meal with me. We walk them over or drive them over to the schools that we partner with, so that we can formally introduce them as part of our team, and that they can meet key stakeholders on those school campuses. And then finally, we're privileged enough to still have the founder of our organization alive and well. And so we try to schedule time for them to meet with him, and so that they can hear, like right now they're coming into their own office space, and it's 34,000 square foot facility. That's amazing. But to meet with the founder gives them the opportunity to see what it was like when he started by himself with a van, a basketball, and a Bible, and just literally driving up to the basketball courts, trying to build relationships and mentor young men and women. And to see where it has come 30 years later, it really is a moment that most of them sort of almost stand in awe of a little bit, but it's good for them to hear where it started to see where it is now, and then when we start to cast vision of where we want to go 30 years from now.
That's great. So Reggie and Michelle, it sounds like you both have some really excellent onboarding practices, and thank you so much for sharing them with us. I think that these are, really things that will help to prepare employees and make them feel confident in the work that they're doing, and that they are prepared for the job ahead of them. Now, Michelle, I mentioned that you have a sample schedule for us. So would you mind just kind of briefly walking us through the schedule, and then also participants, so that in the GoToWebinar control panel, there is a handout tab, and this is actually included in there so that you can use the Excel spreadsheet and manipulate and revise it if this is something that you think would be helpful in your organization. So Michelle, do you want to just walk us through that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, our whole orientation period is 90 days. But this is what a typical week would look like for a person's first week on the job with us. You'll notice that it starts with Tuesday. For the last several years, we've been having our new employees not start on Mondays, just because we are so busy trying to catch up with all the emails that came in over the weekend and other fires that maybe we need to put out, and things that are taking our attention that we're maybe not at our best to welcome our new coworker on Monday. So Tuesday is what we decided on. So you can kind of see the different activities that a person would go through, including the welcome activity where they get to meet their coworkers, touring the building, going through the employee manual, showing them how to log onto their computer and email and things like that. They go out to lunch with their supervisor on the first day and spend some time, like I said before, going over the job description and expectations. And then they will meet with various people around the office, sort of depending on their job. Some of it will be specific to their role, and some of it will be things that everyone does, like everyone goes to a volunteer information session and a pre-match training for BIGS, because it's important that we all understand the program, whether we're a finance manager, an HR person, fund development. We all need to be able to talk about what it is that we do here. And so, as you see, it's kind of every minute planned for those first 4 days, and we start getting that orientation underway, and they don't have to wonder what they're going to be doing. So it's, you will structure your week to the size and needs of your organization, but it's just important to remember that you incorporate the key activities that we talked about and use those first weeks and months to help the new employees understand your program and your culture, and help them start developing relationships with their coworkers.
I love the planning and kind of holistic approach that you take here, and really ensuring that people have a clear understanding of the organization from many stakeholders' perspectives and many department perspectives. This is really great, and I hope that this tool will be helpful for people. I also love that you start on a Tuesday. It really gives people the opportunity to get that preparation on Monday, so that you can really start successfully on Tuesday.
Yes, I think that way, we can remind everybody, hey, the new employee's starting tomorrow. Kind of get psyched up. It's like bringing a new person into your family. So
that's great. Absolutely. Okay, wonderful. So we are going to move on from onboarding to talk more about how to create engaged and collaborative environments. Before we kick this off, though, I just want to remind everybody that we have that question section and the GoToWebinar control panel. I would absolutely appreciate if you have any questions that you start sending them in now. Desiree, our moderator, is going to start going through them and picking out those questions that are going to really help to expand our minds about this topic. So send them in now if you haven't already. And then we're going to turn our focus to creating those engaging and collaborative work environments where people can thrive. But the key question here is, how do you do it? How do you create collaborative work environments? Michelle and Reggie, I've had the opportunity to speak with you both about this, and you have some just really excellent and engaging approaches. So Reggie, why don't you get us started on this one and talk to us about your meeting structure that you employ at Street Ministries.
All right, thank you. So as you see this slide before you, we have a couple of different collaborative networks, meetings that we try to create at Streets. And one is staff meetings. And so I mentioned earlier, we have 2 sites. And so each site, you know, we're one organization, but they run quite independently. And so each site has weekly staff meetings where the site director, you know, is just going through information that's coming from our executive leadership team down, but also just checking in with each department and area, focus area. So Streets, let me back up. Our mission is to engage, encourage, and equip young people to achieve their potential by realizing God made them with a purpose. And we do that primarily through 3 areas: recreation, education, and spiritual formation. And so we have staff who intentionally are hired on to speak into those 3 areas. And so, you know, the site director is meeting with those individuals every week, making sure their site is running well, what's happening, you know, within our site, but also what's happening in the community. You know, are there things specifically happening at the schools that we need to be aware of? Homecoming, you know, special weeks. And so those meetings are really informative and help each team know what's going on at their sites. But then what we do is we encourage these focus area meetings, the team meetings where the education teams from both sites are getting together, talking about what's working at their site, what's not working, and it becomes this opportunity for them to learn and grow from one another. And so each focus area meets together. And then monthly, we have what we call joint staff meetings. And this is when both sites come together at the beginning of the month, but we're basically reviewing last month. They really are primarily now data meetings. And so we are encouraging a culture, again, of we're not data driven, but we're data informed. We want to allow the data that we're recording to help us make informed decisions about where our ministry is going, where the points that we need to focus in on, and invest maybe some more time or more resources, or maybe decide that maybe this isn't what we should be doing. And so we have those meetings. Let's be honest, we just started the data journey about 3 years ago. And so we're fairly new to it, but within 3 years, because we continue to create a culture of this is where we're going, and it's important to us. And so again, I mentioned we're a faith-based organization, and talking data in the Bible Belt is not always a popular thing, and you'll get questioned and about your faith and your sincerity about the gospel versus data. But you know, I often love to go point to places in Scripture where you see data throughout. You know, the Scripture doesn't say Jesus multiplied up some food and fed it to some people, but it's very specific that there was 2 fish, 5 loaves, 5,000 men, and there was 12 baskets of leftovers. Data. And so we're excited about data. It really is driving decisions that we're making, and our team is buying into it. Now, I will say this. We have had some turnover, and some of the turnover was because of the path that we're on. But I will tell you today, I think we're in a better position where we are now because of this than where we were 3 years ago.
That's great. And you really set clear expectations as you kind of moved into this process of incorporating data and metrics in a much more meaningful and intentional way. And so setting that clear expectation really helped your staff to kind of determine if it was the right fit or not.
Correct. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, there's a lot of clarity there, I think.
Awesome. And then I love that these, team meetings, all of them have really helped to increase transparency and support and encouragement for your organization and the staff. And have you really seen the impact of this?
We have. One of the areas that we're pretty excited about was we focus in on elementary literacy. And so we noticed for 2 years in a row, like we were getting significant increases in those students who began the school year not reading on grade level, and the percentage of kids who were reading on grade level. And so we took the data and made an informed decision to reallocate dollars from some other programming areas to that area so that we could hire another full-time staff person. And even with that, at our data meetings, we allow staff to report out to the rest of the team on their data. And we had a meeting two days ago, and they didn't know this was going to happen, but they all had their own little walkout songs. And so they were able to come out and present their data. And at the end of all of the presentations, there was one person who I told them they're all stars, but that wasn't all star. And that person received a $50 gift certificate to their favorite restaurant. And so it created this energy and buzz, again, that we think is encouraging and helping to move forward our desire to use data well.
Oh, that's so great. It sounds like such a wonderful meeting and event that you had, and a great way of recognizing your employees' contribution. So thank you for sharing that, Reggie. Michelle, could you tell us about a few of your top strategies for creating engaged and collaborative work environments where your employees are able to thrive and succeed?
Sure. As you see on the slide, Audrey shows some great statistics about people who have taken the Clifton Strengths Finder assessment and how much more likely they are to be engaged and feel like they are really using the best of their own skills and abilities to contribute to the organization. So one of the things that we do with all new employees is have them take the assessment and find out their top 5 strengths. And then we display those outside of our offices so everybody can see what they are. And we keep them all on a big spreadsheet. So maybe when there's a project that's like, we really need somebody with woo, which is one of the strengths that kind of is an influencing strength, that we can say, who has that? Who would be the people most likely to want to do this project based on those kind of sometimes might be considered soft skills. But so we have done a little bit of strengths work amongst our smaller teams, kind of talking about where our strengths are in each team, what we have, and maybe what we lack, what we need to go outside of our own small team for help for certain things. And so we're hoping to do a lot more work in the near future with the whole staff, bringing everybody together and understanding each other's strengths better. Something else that's very important to keeping people engaged is recognition. Reggie was just talking a little bit about recognizing some of his staff at a staff meeting. that's also part of our monthly staff meeting. So if we go to the next, oh yeah, right here, it's just a photo of a few things that we use for recognition, but you really want to think about what your organization values, and how do we recognize that, and then personalize those things to your organization. The plaque that you see there in the middle is our Starts With Me award, and Starts With Me is a tagline of Big Brothers Big Sisters branding, and we think that it really says what we are about as employees, and in this collaborative environment that we want to have. It's a peer-nominated award for people are recognized for outstanding contributions and sort of going above and beyond. And so it's fun for me every month to see the nominations come in, and to encourage the staff to nominate each other for this award. And then it hangs up in our conference room, and they're very excited when they get their name on the plaque. We also recognize metrics every month, and there where you see the awesome button and the one that says wake up and be awesome. So if you happen to be one of the two people that is recognized for their outstanding program metrics for the month, you get a little note congratulating on you on specifically what it is that you did so well, and then you get a button and a certificate for a casual day. So, there's a lot of opportunities to provide positive feedback to people through recognition. Then another thing that employees across the spectrum of work say that one of the biggest things they want out of work these days is flexibility. So we think autonomy and flexibility is another one of the great things we can offer to our employees. We have flexible scheduling, helps people out maintaining their work-life balance, and also after you have been here for a certain amount of time, you can have work from home opportunities. We also work from home on days when the schools close for snow, which some places in the country don't have to worry about that, but we sure do here in Nebraska. So to me, that's an excellent benefit, not to have to get out on the icy roads. But and then the other thing is we have a lot of staff committees and teams working on special projects and things like that, and creating those teams and maybe helping them get started, but then letting them go and not micromanaging. We're hiring professional people, and we need to treat them as such. So
thank you so much, Michelle. Those are some really great approaches. And I just think, on the autonomy and flexibility kind of slide, this is so important in establishing trust amongst our employees as well. And so what a great kind of tactic at not only helping them, to develop their skill set and to really feel like they have ownership, but also just instilling that trust and the relationship building amongst the staff members as a result.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I also just want to add that there are a number of different assessments. So we mentioned the Clifton Strengths Assessment, but there are tons that can be used that are super helpful. This is just one of many. So there's also a Myers-Briggs and Emergenetics and DISC and True Colors and many, many more. So this is really just the practice of using assessments to help us to determine our strengths so that we can have those conversations with our teams. And not that there's like the number one tool that we should be using, but picking one that works for our organization overall. Okay, great. So let's move on to our very last topic that we have, which is talk about some employee development. I'm just going to give one more reminder to send in those questions. We have about 10 to 15 more minutes before we will be actually addressing them and getting to our Q&A, so keep them coming. What specific approaches and methodologies should managers be using to support their employees and to help them grow? So Reggie, as a learning, someone who's very interested in learning culture and people's growth, what are some of your top ways of doing this with your staff?
So everyone, I shared this with Audrey. When I first came to Streets about 7 years ago, I came in to be the site director of a site that they were building. And, so as I prepared a budget, I got a copy of the previous year's budget and I looked to staff training and development and I saw $500 and I kind of froze in my seat and I went, this probably was a mistake. Let me go talk to the CFO. And I said, is this per person? And he said, no, that's for all 14 of your staff. I went, whoa. So with that being said, we have increased that budget tremendously. But I think it's, even as a nonprofit, we have to fight for our staff. We have to fight for their growth and for their development. And it's like a mentor of mine at Young Life told me, Reggie, you have to see every single person you manage as a future CEO. And so even when funds are limited, look for ways to help them grow so that they can become the best person that they can be. So at Streets, one of the ways we do that is team development. We encourage each one of our site directors to do something with their team outside of just staff meetings. At the end of the day, we are a youth development organization, but we want to be fun. I mean, people, let's be honest, we're in a sector where you don't get the most glorious package to come work, but work should be fun. And so about once a quarter, really about 3 times a year, our site directors gather their teams together and they go do fun events. They go do something that's interactive and away from the job. And so, one example of that, here in Memphis, we have this place called the Escape Room, and it's this unique place where you go and you're basically locked in a room and there are all these clues and keys to get out of the room, and it's based on time, and everyone in Memphis loves it. And so it's just something that you can do with your team to go have fun and build some camaraderie. And then once a year, typically I try to do something like a cookout at my house or a board member's house where we can bring both sites together just for fun and like to let our hair down and hang out and again, just build that team culture even away from work. Secondly, we use interagency trainings. So we're privileged and honored to be a part of the Grizzlies Foundation. We're one of their partner organizations, and they provide unbelievable training for our staff. And so we try to encourage our staff as often as possible to take advantage of these opportunities to go meet others where you can learn and grow, but also the information that typically is coming from the Grizzlies Foundation. Thank you, Desiree. It's really great information, and even to the point that Desiree highly encouraged me to attend the National Mentoring Summit this past January, and it was everything that she said it was going to be. And I came back with the idea that I have to get 2 of our staff to this conference and help them grow and learn and be encouraged. And so, again, we've increased our resources in that area, but I'm probably not going to go so that I can have 2 other staff people learn and grow and be motivated by something like this. And then thirdly, this is brand new. I was actually sitting in on someone else, and the individual talked about, most corporations, most organizations, they want their staff, their employees to understand the goals of the company, achieve these goals, and work hard towards those goals. And most of the meetings are about the company's goals. And I remember walking away from that going, how often do we ask our staff about their goals? And so I sent out a doodle calendar about 2 weeks ago and kind of explained in there that and please hear me, I don't mean for this to sound egotistical, but as the ED of streets, I don't get to spend a lot of time with staff individually. And so I said, I want to spend time with each one of you guys individually. Here's an hour. Here's about 22 slots. Register for it, and it's just going to be me and you talking about your goals, your dreams, and potentially even drop a dream board. And I probably created that around 7 p.m. one night, and by lunchtime the next day, it was pretty much full. And I took from that like, wow, I didn't know what to take from it. Let me be honest with you. And then the next day, that afternoon, I saw one of our employees, and she was just like, Reggie, thank you so much. And I had no idea what she was talking about. I was like, what happened? What are you thanking me for? She was like, just thank you for sending out that email, that calendar, so we can spend some time with you. And again, it was just one of those affirmations that, okay, everyone, let's be honest, you send out stuff to your staff and say, hey, we need a response. And sometimes it's a week before you get a response from everyone. And on this one, I had a response from pretty much everyone within 24 hours. And it was one of those moments where you kind of sit back and go, man, the idea of, the executive director or someone in leadership saying, I want to spend time with you and not talk about the organization, but talk about you and your dreams and your goals and how we can help you accomplish that. That means something to our staff, right? And so I'm so glad I did it. And I told our leadership team, this is something that if I'm going to try to do once a semester, we think in terms of school years. So, but again, it's just a way to encourage, to help grow and help develop our staff, that they can become all that they can be, even if it means them leaving streets. I'm the biggest fan of that. If you want to talk about how can you measure leadership of an organization or of a leader, that people are growing in such a way that you're actually losing them to something better. So that's some of the ways that we're trying to help develop and grow here at Streets.
I love those. They're so fantastic, especially, obviously all of them are great, but the ED sit downs is something that I think is not a common practice, and kind of one of those new ideas that is also probably something that we all should be doing, as really helping to encourage our employees to grow and having those conversations about what their goals are and how we as organizations can support them. That's great. So thank you so much, Audrey, for sharing those. Michelle, can you tell us a little bit about how you do staff development at Big Brothers Big Sisters?
Sure. So as you see here, there's kind of 4 topics that we want to touch on. So we'll start with the ongoing coaching. We have, each employee has a one-on-one meeting with their supervisor at least once a month. Some people are meeting more often, but give plenty of opportunity to discuss your projects that you're working on, give the supervisor opportunity for that private discussion for feedback, whether there's something that needs an improvement, or just maybe a pat on the back in a private conversation. And we set these expectations out right from the beginning when they have a new employee join their team, with those times that are set up for the supervisor to meet with the new person in their first week. And they have their time on the first day, and then they also have a wrap-up meeting on Friday afternoon at the end of the week. And so we really set the expectation that supervisors will be interacting and giving feedback on an ongoing basis. And then next is that when you're doing your ongoing feedback, is that there shouldn't be any big surprises for an employee once the review time comes, because if you're discussing their work on at least a monthly basis, then everybody should know where they stand, and so it shouldn't be when the annual review comes, all of a sudden they haven't been doing things right. Nobody likes to be surprised that way. So then we also go to peer support. We have senior level staff that help train new members of their team. We also assign a staff big. We call our mentors bigs. So our new staff have a big who is one of their coworkers to kind of help them acclimate to the new environment. And we also have subject matter experts on staff, so people who have become particularly well-versed in dealing with kids who experience trauma or grief or special educational needs, or what have you. Then another thing we talk about on an ongoing basis is leadership, and we want everybody to feel like they are a leader in some way, and we like to give people the opportunity to lead the different committees and project teams and things. I work with our supervisors to identify the emerging leaders on their teams, and then so they can start giving them kind of stretch assignments and doing some extra training opportunities with them with an eye to maybe succession planning and that kind of thing. And then last, the annual review process. It's a kind of a three-prong approach for us, starting with a self-assessment that each employee completes, and then the supervisor's actual review, and then an employee development plan where you discuss their goals and training needs and things for the coming year. So I think the most interesting of those maybe is the self-assessment. Really gives you a chance to look back on the past 12 months and think about what were your successes, what had you set out to do that maybe you weren't able to accomplish for one reason or another. And then one of the questions on the self-assessment, going back to the Gallup Strengths Finder, is consider your top 5 strengths, and do you feel like you are using those to the best use for the agency. So that's kind of the four steps in coaching and review. So
that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Michelle. And I feel like this development piece really brought us full circle and kind of demonstrating how both you, Michelle, and Reggie are creating those cultures of learning and development for your staff, and continuing to focus on their growth as individuals and as teams for the overall organization. So that actually brings us to the end of our conversation. So thank you so much, Reggie and Michelle, for sharing your expertise, experience, and enthusiasm with our participants. Our panelists have provided some really excellent tools and resources, and we want to give you one more for your staffing needs, which is the staffing calculator for match support. So this staffing calculator has been developed through Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership, and the National Mentoring Resource Center. And this helps to estimate the staff time needed for your program model itself. So this is like a whole process that you can go through in an Excel spreadsheet that allows you to actually estimate how much time you'll need to accomplish your goals and to do all of the specific activities that are involved with matching, monitoring, support, and closure for your organization. So this requires that you have input, so you're going to be kind of going through the calculator itself and putting information into it about the estimated amount of time that your staff takes for each of these activities and how many matches you have. And then the calculator produces an estimate for how many staff hours and full-time staff members would be necessary for this role. So if you are looking at part-time staff, you can break that down. That gives you the overall hours and then full-time staff members. So here is just an example of one of these kind of tags that you would be looking at and completing. And then that is the link so that you can go directly to this and find all of the resources necessary to actually complete this yourself if this is something that you'd like to do and use as a tool for your organization. So I know that many of you have been sending in excellent questions throughout this webinar. We have about 5 to 10 minutes left for Q&A. So Desiree, do you have a few great questions to close us out? I think we'll probably be able to do 1 to 2,
Okay.
and I'll let you know how we're doing on time.
All right, yeah, great. Like I said, Michelle and Reggie, great information, and just get straight to the questions. One of the questions, specifically since it's working with volunteers and mentors, was how do you actually, inside of your onboarding and culture kind of development, how do you encourage mentors to be part of the team and / volunteers that might be working with your organization? And I'll shoot it to Reggie first because I know it's a youth development program. And then Michelle, if you have anything to add.
Desiree, I'm so sorry. Will you kind of rephrase that again for me?
Yes, when you are working with just kind of thinking about staff onboarding, do you work with any volunteers or mentors to be part of your staff? And if so, how do you incorporate them inside of like working with your staff?
Honestly, we have not included them in the process of being a part of the hiring process. I will tell you, I heard something this summer that we're thinking about implementing. We're just trying to figure out how to do it. But Girls Inc., before they actually hire someone, they have them come spend time with their organization. And actually with kids prior to hiring them. And so we're trying to just figure that out for us because, you know, if somebody is already working and you want them to come spend 15 to 20 hours before hiring them, we have not been able to figure that piece out yet. But we do think there's value to having them interact with youth before hiring them.
Great. And Michelle, do you all utilize any volunteers or mentors as part of your team?
Well, I would say right now we don't use BIGs as part of like onboarding of new staff. They do have a chance during their onboarding probably to meet BIGs. You know, everybody would, because they're one of the things, everybody has to go to a match activity that, you know, we sponsor activities for the bigs and littles to come to. And so that's part of an onboarding experience, even for those who won't be in direct service, to attend those. So they would have a chance to meet bigs there, but the bigs don't have an official role in onboarding.
All right, great. And we have time for one more question. And just thinking about handling promotions, how do you all know when it's time to promote an employee, or what is kind of the ladder of promotion for your organization? And we'll start quickly with Michelle, and then Reggie, if you have a process, you can share as well.
Okay, thanks. Great question. So we do have advancement sort of ladder for our program department that would start with an entry-level enrollment coordinator or match support specialist, moving up to senior level of those positions. And so to reach senior, you have to be with the agency for 2 years and then be meeting the assigned metrics for the position. So they have to have met the metrics for the 9 out of the previous 12 months. So when that 2-year anniversary hits, if they are meeting the metrics, they automatically are promoted to a senior level. And so that changes. So they become senior match support specialist. Then we have mid-level managers, match support managers, and a director of match support all the way, and then chief program officer. So, and that's published, so they can see if they're in program, what the opportunities would be for advancement. In other positions, it's a little harder because it's more not so much of departments, but a lot of kind of departments of one. So, it might just be maybe after you've been there for a while, maybe you get a little change to your title and an increase or something. So
awesome. All right. Thank you for sharing. Reggie, do you have a process real quickly? You might be on mute. So.
Thank you, Desiree.
Great.
We do have a small little process because we're a small organization, but we wanted to create an opportunity for those all-stars to advance. And so the advancement here is not high, is not, we're trying to at least provide space for more width so that they can be compensated well. But as far as advancement up, there's not many roles or positions that we've created there, but we're trying to, let's be honest, we're trying to reward very competent, engaging, creative staff and keep them as long as we can.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Desiree, so much for queuing up those questions. And as a reminder, if your questions didn't get answered, we encourage you to reach out to our panelists directly. And then also check out the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series archive. There is tons of excellent information to support a lot of the questions that you have, and also if it's kind of outside of the scope of what we've been doing today, definitely refer to it because we've covered lots and lots of topics through the last few years on this series. So thank you so much, panelists, for being here. Thank you, Desiree, for moderating those questions, and participants, thank you for being on this call. So check out the OJJDP National Mentoring Resource Center website for no-cost mentoring resources to help you apply evidence-based mentoring practices to your program. The OJJDP NMRC provides evidence reviews on mentoring models and mentoring for special populations, implementation resources, from training manuals to mentor guides, lots of different tools. They're reviewed by the NMRC Research Board, a blog featuring innovations and best practices for mentoring practitioners, and the opportunity to request no-cost training or technical assistance. Additionally, we encourage you to register your program with the Mentoring Connector if you haven't done so already. This is a national database of mentoring programs. It's zip code searchable and allows mentors and mentees from across the country to find your program. It's connected to LinkedIn, NBA Cares, Mentor.gov, and so many other avenues of free program promotion. So make sure you're on it if you're not there already. As a reminder, 1 week after the webinar, all attendees will receive an email with a link to the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series webpage, where we will post the recording, slides, and additional resources so you can check this out again or let your friends know and coworkers if they missed it. Also, don't forget that we want your feedback. So at the end of today's webinar, please answer the short survey and help us make this series even better. So be sure to visit the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series page on Mentor's website for an archive of all those past webinars and information about upcoming webinars. And make sure to check out next month's webinar, which will be November 21st, and it will be covering National Mentoring Month. So a reminder, that's in January and will be coming up, and this will help you to plan for success during National Mentoring Month. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope you have an excellent afternoon. We look forward to seeing you next time.